And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Stratford, Dave Lockren along with you on this Wednesday morning, getting ready for the 8-game late slate, or main slate as it were, on most of the DFS sites. We're brought to you in part by Yahoo DFS. I'll get to more on that momentarily. Also bringing you up to speed on what Awesemo Plus is offering as we head into the NFL season. But first and foremost, Dave, how the hell are you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Football is almost upon us. I could not be happier.
Yep. I made the preliminary tweet of when does NBA DFS start, just so I can get the tilting of week 1 of NFL out of the way for myself. But I know you and newcomer to Awesemo.com, Sal Vitri, had the first strategy show for NFL on Tuesday, I'll say morning/afternoon, depending on where everyone was. I know it went for about 90 minutes. That content's available over on your YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, hit that alarm bell. Make sure you are up to date on our latest and greatest over there. Anything that, from an NFL perspective, we'll talk about this briefly here, you feel like you need to talk about before the season starts? Any takes, any out of the ballpark sort of predictions you want to get off your chest before we get running here on the MLB preview of this slate?
So any NFL predictions?
Yep, NFL predictions.
Oh, man. I had a bunch of them like 2 weeks ago, and I'm already not feeling great about many of them.
Did they have to do with Shady McCoy?
I won't make a prediction, but I'll say I think the bulk of people's drafts, not everyone, of course, but one team that is going to influence all of them in a great way or is going to crush it is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Absolutely.
What I mean by that is Jameis Winston, Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard, all these guys getting an incredible amount of hype. I understand it. Winston throws the ball a lot. Bruce Arians with the downfield attack, things should be good. But there's that thing about hype where you're basing it on what we expect them to do, and that's everyone, of course, but it's different than Mike Evans, who had over 1,500 yards, and Julio Jones, who led the league in receiving. We're projecting them to do something, but they've done it before. With a lot of these guys, they haven't done it before. So I'm fascinated by seeing how high up the draft board a lot of these players go. O.J. Howard and Chris Godwin are two of them that have caught a lot of hype. David Montgomery is another one. We remember what happened with rookie running backs last year, not named Saquon Barkley, Rashad Penny, Ronald Jones, Royce Freeman, who went very early in drafts. Rookie running backs will be interesting again this year. But I think that Tampa Bay situation is a one to watch closely. And look, I'm going to have a lot of them in DFS week 1. I don't see how I can't. But as much as I love them, I can't say I'm confident.
I am right there with you. I think that's a great call on Tampa Bay, that they will be where talking about Play Draft, the app that many of us play best ball on. That's going to be a lot of the stacks you're going to see out there is Tampa Bay, Arizona, being a large contingent of how those rosters are constructed. And if they falter, that's going to be a large majority. You talk about GPP strategy, you're going to be fading a large majority of that faltering if they were to not be one of the top offenses over the start of the season. Now, can they round out and help you a little bit in season long? Sure. But from a best ball strategy, it's going to be very intriguing to see how that all plays out and exactly how it ends up being at the end of the year, looking at draft or your MFLs or wherever else you might be playing in best ball or season-long high-stakes leagues, NFFC, right? NFFC, as it were. So tons of content available over at Awesemo.com for your NFL season. We know that drafts are pretty much behind you, but there are Alex's season-long rankings. Those will be updated as the season goes on. But you also get all the DFS content. I mentioned Lofty and Sal with the strategy show. You're going to get tons of NFL content from the live YouTube channel, but also behind the paywall. We'll have tons of content from projections and articles there. Also some articles in front of the paywall. So check that out. If you want to sign up for Awesemo.com, you should do so. It is using the promo code EARLYBIRD, one word, gets you 50% off your first month of content at Awesemo.com. We're going to dive into this Major League Baseball slate. It is that time of year where my PSA, and I mentioned it with EMAC yesterday, September call-ups have happened. We saw a pinch hitter in the 4th inning of a couple of games on Tuesday. It's just going to be the way it happens. So if you're reticent to lose money because of bad decisions by managers, maybe play a little bit less. Maybe to pull back on exactly how you're constructing your lineups, because it's going to be some strange decisions. It's going to be some times where pinch hitters happen in National League parks that you weren't expecting, pitching changes that happen, even batters who don't even get an at-bat, as you saw on Tuesday night. Pinch hitter was announced, pitching change was announced, another pinch hitter was announced, and thus you lost a batter there. But nonetheless, we're going to dive in here. We're going to go through pitching first. We're going to use DK as our jumping off point. I'll reference some FanDuel and Yahoo prices along the way, and then we'll talk about some offenses as well. We look at Shane Bieber here, Dave, against the Chicago White Sox. This is a White Sox team that against righties we've gone against many times, a 25.8% K percentage, but also just a 5.9% walk percentage, 93 WRC plus, an ISO below 160 at 157 at last check. All of the check boxes are here for Shane Bieber except the price point, right? And we have to consider that when rostering our pitchers. 11.5 feels a little bit rich, but for a guy who has had some pretty dynamic upside, has been pretty consistent on the year, do you feel comfortable, maybe cash game specifically, rostering Shane Bieber at 11.5 on DK?
Yeah, I mean, he is one of the best fantasy pitchers in baseball right now. And the Chicago White Sox are one of the few teams that you feel pretty good rostering pitchers against. So he's very expensive. It is not a Coors slate, which is, something that comes to mind when you start looking at any of these guys, when you get these 14 and a half, 15 run totals, just out of control high totals that kind of limit your ability to pay up for pitching. But no, I do think on a slate like this, if you wanted to pay for Shane Bieber, it's very doable. Now, we'll get into some cheap pitchers and see where they stand, and if there's anybody that we can pair them with and lighten that load a little bit from a very high price point. But look, the White Sox have the second highest K rate on their active roster versus right-handed pitchers. They have a 93 WRC plus, which ranks towards the bottom of baseball, bottom 10 to be exact. They have a little bit of power, but not a lot. As a matter of fact, I think their ISO has dropped toward like bottom 5. Yeah, third lowest ISO versus righties in the league this season. So there are a lot of reasons to feel pretty confident about Shane Bieber here. And not to mention the fact that he's just got some of the best strikeout stuff, lowest xFIP, lowest walk rate, all of that stuff on this slate. One of the lowest in baseball altogether. Not only that, but he's got a ridiculously high ceiling as well. And he can go out there, give you 8 scoreless with 12 strikeouts, and you wouldn't bat an eye at it. So, I think when you're talking about your highest priced pitchers, Bieber over Bumgarner just makes way too much sense to avoid it. If I'm going to pay above 10K for one of these guys, it's certainly going to be Shane Bieber. Zach Gallen has been impressive. Mm-hmm. And I think at the right price, you can make an argument for him. But again, if I'm going to pay for a pitcher, and I know that he's still $2,000 cheaper than Bieber, I'm just going to find the extra money to get to Bieber, even though Gallen's got a matchup with the Padres. The White Sox strike out at a very high clip. They're not good versus righties. They do not have a lot of power. This game's in Cleveland, not in Chicago. There's a lot to like about Bieber here, and he's just been impressive enough to justify paying this much for him, yeah.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I will say Gallen on FanDuel is $8,500, Bieber $11K flat. So that's a $2,500 contrast between the two. As you pointed out, about $1,900 on DraftKings. I like Gallen here simply because of the matchup for and with San Diego. The Padres striking out at 25.8%, but there's a lot to like about Bieber here. And if you're constructing lineups by hand, it makes sense to start there and figure out where you can go. If you're mass multi-entering, then maybe you go to some exposure and figure out exactly how much you want of Bieber on the day. But he's going to be sort of that bellwether. I'd be very intrigued to see what his ownership is on this slate overall, as of course, Osmo.com has those projections from an ownership prediction perspective each and every day. So you can check them out first thing in the morning, and then also as lineups come in leading up to lock. So you may want to check in on those. You mentioned Bumgarner. 10-4 from Bumgarner without the strikeout upside that we've seen from him in the past. I'll pass there, as you were talking about. Then we get into the sub 10K. You mentioned Gallen already, but we get Eduardo Rodriguez. Hyun-Jin Ryu is at home against Colorado, 9,200. Seems like a pretty decent price point for the potential matchup here. Berrios gets Boston, and then Tanner Roark and Chris Paddock are above 8K pitchers. Roark, not necessarily the strikeout guy you might expect. Los Angeles doesn't strike out a ton. Paddock against Arizona may have some upside, but Diamondbacks do have a pretty decent offense on the year. Hyun-Jin Ryu checking in, as I said, at 9,200 seems to stand out a bit. What do you like here? Are there other names sub 10K that you'll consider from a tournament or cash perspective?
You know, if Roark was very cheap, I might consider it because you're probably going to see 6, possibly more righties in the lineup for the Angels, which is at least interesting, knowing that he's so much worse against lefties. Berrios is inexpensive, but he's not an elite strikeout pitcher. And, he's got a low 20s strikeout rate, and he's facing Boston at Fenway Park. So I'll gladly pass on that. Eduardo Rodriguez against Minnesota. I have a lot of respect for him. I'd expect him to go out there and pitch a pretty solid game. But at the same time, you're not going to be paying that much for him against Minnesota. I'd honestly rather take Gallen just based on that matchup because the matchup for Rodriguez against all of those power bats is really daunting.
Yep.
Hyun-Jin Ryu is an interesting one. Like you said, not a particularly great strikeout pitcher, but he has been extremely solid this season. His last few starts, though, have been concerning. And I'll tell you what, I will look further into this for tomorrow's shows to see if he's maybe lost velocity or what. But I don't know. Dave Roberts talked about possibly having his next start skipped. He's thrown, 157 innings this season. We know how Roberts is about limiting his pitchers. My guess would be here, and I could be wrong, that even if he doesn't skip it, you might see Ryu limited to like 85 pitches. It's pure speculation, but based on 2 straight blow-up outings and 1 straight outing where he definitely wasn't solid. And to be fair, at Arizona, first the Yankees, at Atlanta, not easy spots to pitch, but that's still a little bit concerning given how almost infallible he was earlier this season outside of that one Coors start. So I don't see myself going there either. That whole mid-range is that 8 to 9K range is kind of ugly. Chris Paddock, if there's one thing we know about him, it's very seldom do you see him pitch deep into games. I know he just went 7 strong innings against the Giants, which is great. But is that something that we'd see consistently out of him?
Yep.
I don't know. He really has struggled to go deep into games. And when you're paying for a guy, it's a little bit tough. Now, I think at his price point, it's not crazy to think that he's playable, but you might just be better going to like Jake Junis against Detroit based on how unbelievably awful this baseball team is. The Tigers, when you're talking about where they rank against righties on the season, only the Marlins have a worse WOBA, WRC plus, and ISO. They are the only team. And as a matter of fact, there is not a team this season that has a higher strikeout rate on their active roster against righties. Nico Goodrum done for the season. Nick Castellanos with the Cubs has been for a while now. I mean, there's really like no redeeming qualities about this entire Detroit offense. So I think you take advantage of that, and if you have to pay $7,500 for Jake Junis, to me it makes quite a bit of sense. So he would be that guy at 7K or above, outside of say Shane Bieber, that I would have the most interest in, and it might give you a little bit of salary relief there before we get down to the bottom of this.
Yep, and that makes a ton of sense. To check in quickly on Yahoo at the top end, it is in fact Shane Bieber at 54, Bumgarner at 46, Ryu at $44, Gallen at 39, Junis at 38, Paddock at 38 as well, Roark at 36. So you get some salary relief pretty quickly here. A guy like Trevor Williams is $31. We'll talk about him. And Michael Wacha momentarily. I will also point out that this is all prices from the no management fee contest that is happening Wednesday night. Yahoo running out these MLB contests pretty much every day now with no rake, no management fee. So the $3 should fill pretty quickly over there. I will also remind you that Yahoo DFS has a gigantic Week 1 NFL contest that is available for you to play in. You'll want to get in on that. That means it is a $25 entry, $1 million in prizes, 40K max entries, 6.7K entries so far, management free, NFL $1 million baller. You'll want to get in on that over on Yahoo DFS. Now, Dave, you went through sort of the meteor top end of the mid tier. You mentioned Jake Junis. We get into the Trevor Williams, Wakas of the world. If you're rostering Bieber at 11.5, you're going to have to find someone down here that you at least are most comfortable with. Is there any cheap options that you feel like first glance, or even as you look over this a second time, that you might be comfortable with between Duggar and Williams, Waka, Ivanova, and Edwin Jackson?
Dude, that's ugly.
I mean, yes, I agree.
I mean, and that is really ugly. And okay, so here's what I would say. I'm not going to Nova or Edwin Jackson or Senzatella. I just can't bring myself to do it. I mean, even Jackson against a pretty weak Kansas City team, there just doesn't seem to be enough there to justify it, despite him being as cheap as he is. The same for Senzatella. I mean, this guy is just dreadfully bad. As far as Ivan Nova goes in Cleveland, no, I actually, and I know he's had a couple actually really impressive starts. Not going to take anything away from the guy. But I can also tell you that I will likely have a lot of Cleveland bats. So that's where I'm at on those guys. The lowest I would probably go is, and to be fair, Michael Wacha hasn't been very good either, but Michael Wacha against San Francisco, they should be big favorites here at home. Chances of getting the win are much higher than Nova, Jackson, or Senzatella. So that's decent. Granted, he's not 4K, but he's also pretty discounted. And then, God, Trevor Williams, I thought he was actually decent to start the season. I don't think he is, but you actually don't need to be decent against Miami. Like I said, worst WOBA, WRC plus, and ISO against righties this season, the worst, and a top 7 strikeout rate. They are a very, very bad baseball team from top to bottom. And if there's one thing about Trevor Williams is that he will face a lot of righties here, and that's what I would much prefer to see. This season hasn't been as friendly to him, but he has been someone that has had your pretty standard splits against lefties and against righties. Once again, I think they should – Gallen's on the other side, so I don't know what the line looks like on this game, but it should be enough. And he's striking righties out at 21%, lefties at 13%. So you at least give me that somewhat around league average rate against righties, face 7 of them, and you can make an argument for it. So I think, between Wacha, Williams, and Jake Junis, there is going to be some ownership there. I don't doubt that. It'll be interesting to see where, like Robert Duggar is, but I know he was popular last time out and he had a very solid game. But my guess is that most of that ownership at a comparable price goes to Junis, goes to Williams, and goes to Wacha.
Anytime you can roster Michael Wacha, you just need to do it.
You just need to not play that night.
Well, there's that as well. I will be quite honest. Looking through this the first time, Wacha and Williams stood out because of matchup and because of price point. I think, to your point, Dave, ownership will be intriguing here. And I think for those of you who are playing in GPPs this time of the season, you need more so than ever to worry about ownership, to understand how it's all playing in. If these guys are heavily owned, take the players against them. If they're not owned at all, then maybe you have some leverage and you can get some of the higher price bats that are on the higher end of the spectrum. So you have to at least weigh that all out as you consider all the different machinations of price points, roster construction, and so on. I have to ask you as we roll on here, what offenses are you into? Which ones do you think have the most upside, and which ones do you think are going to provide the most potential high-end talent? Obviously, with Nova and Jackson and Senzatella, they're clear-cut pitchers to stack against, but are those your favorite offenses between Cleveland, Kansas City, and the LA Dodgers?
Yeah, see, that's kind of one of the things when it comes to Bieber is which of these guys or which of these offenses can we pay for? Because if you want to get Cleveland against Ivan Nova, and I wouldn't blame anyone for that, it's a fantastic spot. You're definitely going to have to pay for them as a stack. And it's the same way for a lot of these good teams. So just taking a look at the implied totals on this slate, you're going to have some high ones, no question. Like there are going to be a lot of teams with totals much. Well, put it this way. Let's see. So 6.4 for the Dodgers expected against Senzatella, 5.9 for Boston against Berrios, which is crazy. 5.8 for Cleveland against Ivanova, like them a lot. Kansas City 5.6 against Edwin Jackson. My guess is, you get one of these teams that isn't very expensive and they're facing a bad pitcher, as we've seen many times. Even if it's not a great offense, they're going to be popular. That might not be the case, though, with Kansas City's more expensive bats. Like you'll probably see Ryan O'Hearn and, if assuming Cuthbert's in the lineup, these guys will get ownership because of how cheap they are. But then guys more along the lines of Mondesi and who's back in the lineup, by the way, and like Whit Merrifield, who are a bit expensive, maybe Jorge Soler, that might be where you can differentiate and pay up for those more expensive bats against a really bad pitcher. Doesn't mean you can't get O'Hearn and such into your lineup, but I think the higher priced guys will definitely be less popular. And then you have Minnesota at 5.2 against Rodriguez. It's crazy how good – it just shows you how good these offenses are. You got an 11 over-under on a day where Berrios and Rodriguez are on the mound facing each other. And then Oakland against Sandoval at 5.6. So, not that many games and 8 teams with a run total or implied run total above 5. There certainly will be a lot of scoring. You just got to be on the right ones, obviously. And, your easy answer, Dodgers, Cleveland, Kansas City. But I also think if you can in these spots, pay for the guys that are going to be lower owned and make sure that when you're looking at, say, aggregate ownership on a team and it's like, oh, man, this stack's really popular, make sure it's not because 1 or 2 guys are eating up all of that ownership.
That's a great point, and something that I don't know from a DFS perspective enough people think about on a daily basis of, if one guy is supposed to be 32% owned, that is going to weigh into that aggregate ownership that Dave just talked about. Look at the individual ownership. Look at where the lineup rolls out to. Can you make a roster that is more palatable price-wise because of a different lineup that was rolled out that maybe some people won't be on because of a late-breaking lineup or whatever it might be? Just be on top of it as you go through and as you are aware of the different possibilities in each and every one of your lineups and each construction that you have as you're creating each and every point along the DFS construction that you have. Also, we have over at Osmo ownership projections. You have Fantasy Cruncher. You have the lineup builder. Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on, Osmo Plus, available to you with the promo code EarlyBird. Dave, as we close out the podcast and as we decide exactly where we lean, any last thoughts to where you think you're going to focus on the deep dive or the deeper dive when you and Adam host at 5 p.m.?
Yeah, I think a lot of it will come down to whether or not it's worth paying up for a guy like Bieber and whether it's worth just playing 2 of these mid-range guys because, as of now, it's very early. This is a preliminary look. We don't have ownership yet. We don't have any of that yet. But, if you were to go ahead and say play Jake Junis and Michael Wacha, it doesn't feel good. But then you can pretty much do whatever you want with your lineups. You can stack Cleveland with ease, Kansas City, Dodgers with impunity. There's just really nothing that's difficult for you to do here. I mean, especially if Jock Peterson's out of the lineup, then you're going to get a cheaper bat in there and make it easier to stack this team because Bellinger is really the only guy outside of like Will Smith who's really that expensive.
Right. It makes a ton of sense. I want to ask you, how do you feel that Justin Bieber's recent Instagram post favorite? I'm kidding. I was trying to work that in, but it's not going to work. I'm gonna let that be.
He also admitted to heavy drug use. I saw on Twitter today.
Yeah, he did. He did. He's a grown up.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him. I like guys that use heavy drugs. Good for him.
And admit it on social media. That's really what we're looking for. But nonetheless,
all about them likes, bro.
Yeah, the impressions, as it were. The impressions
Facebook
are what matters.
might take them away.
Yeah,
you didn't hear about that?
I didn't.
Yeah, Facebook might be taking away the like feature. I think that would piss a lot of people off.
I'm still waiting for Facebook to sell, and they're going to monetize this eventually. Who's looking at your profile?
Yeah.
At some point, you're going to want to know what X is stalking your Facebook profile, and you're going to pay for it. And people are going to be freaked the F out when that happens. And it's going to happen because Mark, whatever, why am I forgetting his name?
Ruffalo. Zuckerberg.
That was awesome. And the Funky Bunch, Mark Zuckerberg, he's going to monetize it. He's not. He's going to figure out a way to sell.
Scumbag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all along. So no, I did not see that, but it doesn't surprise me that they would try to completely redo their platform.
They're exploring the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. With that said, you find Dave on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. Dave, if you could, over the next few weeks, obviously it's a transition period as we get into NFL. You still have the Sirius show. You have a ton going on over at Osmo. Where can people find you from a live experience? So you have the strategy show, you have the Sirius show. Where can people find your expertise on display?
So you got the strategy show Monday through Friday, NFL. It's the first time we've done an NFL strategy show, so we're really excited about it. Yesterday with Sal Vetri went over really well. Wednesday will be Chris Baggs and myself. Thursday I'll be back on with Sal. Monday, by the way, we didn't have one this Monday. It was Labor Day, but that's Sal and myself. Or no, Manny and myself. I'm sorry. Manny Laura will be doing some shows with us. And then Friday will be Manny and you'll see who else. But that we got that. And then Sirius XM, Saturday, Sunday, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. But we're moving 7 to 9 on Sunday as we did last week, which is, if you get an opportunity, tune in. It's a lot of fun because we basically we cover the end of the 4 p.m. games, right? So you got like 40 minutes there, which is a lot of fun. Talk about them in real time, discuss what's going on. You usually have some great like photo finishes between good football teams. And then we break down what happened throughout the day from week to week. So 7 to 9 Sunday, 7 to 9 Eastern time. It's a really fun show.
There you have it.
And Ben Rasa and myself on the game plan, of course. I think we're going to rebrand that to the Deeper Dive. But that's going to be Sunday, 10 a.m., not 11, but Sunday, 10 a.m., get you prepped for that slate. Always a fun time doing that with Ben Rasa.
There you have it. So you find Dave also on Twitter at Lofty_D. As I said, LOUGHY_D. Find me at Dan Strafford if you so choose, at Osmo_com, Osmo NFL as well. We have a giveaway going on right now over on Osmo NFL and Osmo_com. You'll want to check that out as you can potentially win a subscription to this here website that you're listening to right now on SoundCloud, on your app of choice when it comes to podcasting, or over on the live YouTube platform as we broadcast each and every day. Tons of live content, and this here DFS Early Bird presented by none other than Osmo.com.